Kimbo Slice, Taxi Driver, and the Communications Decency Act are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is February 8th, 2022. It is the 39th day of the year. We got 326 days left in this year. It's the 6th Tuesday in the 7th week and the 50th day of winter. If today's your birthday, you're still an Aquarius. I really wish they would switch that up more often. I don't know. I know it's been going this way since forever, but come on. Tired of saying Aquarius. Today is National Safer Internet Day. Every year, Safer Internet Day brings tools, education, and awareness to create a safer internet for both kids and adults. From cyberbullying to identity theft to fraud and to human trafficking, the internet can be a frightening place. Safer Internet Day and ConnectSafely.org aim to make the internet a better place. I really wish they would. It is a toxic environment in most places on the internet. Just people that have nothing to do but be negative and just try and drag people down and say horrible things. I have a real problem with it. That's why I don't spend much time on Twitter anymore. It's just bad for your soul, it feels like. I often wish they would do something to cut down on trolls on YouTube, Twitter, even Facebook. It's too bad. Anyway, all right, let's see what else February 8th has given us. 1693, the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, is granted a charter by King William III and Queen Mary II. 1837, Richard Johnson becomes the first Vice President of the United States, chosen by the United States Senate. He was Vice President for President Martin Van Buren. He is the only Vice President ever selected by the U.S. Senate under a provision of the 12th Amendment. You never hear much about the Vice Presidents. You always hear about the presidents. I mean, everyone knows a handful of vice presidents, and normally they're vice presidents within the last 20 years, or at least, a portion of their life. I mean, has anyone ever heard of George M. Dallas? I haven't, but he was the vice president under James K. Polk. William R. King under Franklin Pierce. Levi P. Morton? Never heard of him. He was under Benjamin Harrison. 1865, Delaware refuses to ratify the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Slavery was outlawed in the United States, including in Delaware, when the amendment was ratified by the requisite number of states on December 6, 1865. Delaware finally got around to ratifying the 13th Amendment on February 12, 1901, which would have been Abraham Lincoln's 92nd birthday. 1885, the first government-approved Japanese immigrants arrive in Hawaii. 1887, the Dawes Act authorizes the President of the United States to survey Native American tribal lands and divide it into individual allotments. As you can imagine, people that had money that wanted to buy land, this was a great thing. But to the Native Americans, they're, wait, now you said what? We're doing what? How's this work? 1908, the Army gets some airplanes. Orville and Wilbur Wright built a plane for the U.S. Army. That was the first one they had in 1908. They eventually turned it into the Army Air Corps and then eventually broke off from the Army and became the Air Force. 1922, the White House gets a radio. This must have been mind-blowing at the time. You think back to days like that before we had any of that stuff, and you could hear someone's voice over the airwaves. How does that happen? It's like magic. I mean, I think back to when I was like 8th grade, 7th grade, whatever. If someone told me about the internet, how it was going to be eventually, I would have thought they were insane. There's no way all that could happen over a computer. When I think about things like that, like when we had radios and when cable television was brand new, that was like the first big thing in my life that was like mind-blowing was cable television. And there's all these advancements all the time. I wonder what's going to be the big thing in 20 years from now. It should be amazing. It always seems to be. 1971, the NASDAQ stock market index opens for the first time. 1974, after 84 days in space, the crew of Skylab 4, the last crew to visit the American space station known as Skylab, returns to Earth. 1996, the U.S. Congress passes the Communications Decency Act. Movies released on February 8th, 1976. Taxi Driver. Easily one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, Martin Scorsese at his finest. This movie was amazing. It had Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, Sybil Shepherd, Albert Brooks, Peter Boyle, Harvey Keitel. If you've never seen the movie, it's about a man named Travis Bickle, who's a 26-year-old ex-Marine from the Vietnam War who's suffering from PTSD. He has insomnia and all these other problems, so he just drives a cab late at night to kind of deal with his insomnia. He's a total loner and has all kinds of issues going on, spends far too much time on 42nd Street back in the 1970s. If you knew anything about New York City back then, it was nothing but porn theaters. So he's in those a lot. It's just a really weird movie, but the acting in this movie is outstanding. Its budget was under $2 million, and the box office alone, not counting all the DVD sales and VHS tapes over the years, was $28 million. Robert De Niro actually drove cabs late at night for a couple months before actual filming so he can get the feel of what it's like to be a cab driver. This was before he was a giant megastar and he could pull that off. Taxi Driver formed part of the delusional fantasy of John Hinckley Jr. He's the guy that tried to kill President Reagan, actually shot him in 1981. Hinckley's defense was that all this was an attempt to impress Jodie Foster, who he had a total fixation on. He even had a mohawk, just like Robert De Niro had in the movie. His attorney concluded his defense by playing the movie for the jury. When Martin Scorsese heard about this whole thing and the motivation, he actually briefly thought about quitting movies. He wasn't going to do it anymore. I watched an interview with Jodie Foster. She was only like 12 years old when this movie was filmed, and she was playing a prostitute, so there's all kinds of problems with that right there. I don't think that would fly in today's society. But Martin Scorsese had a hard time directing her in these parts, and actually Robert De Niro, who he was a good actor at the time, he wasn't a megastar like he is now, but he helped her along with it and rehearsed all her scenes with her and kind of told her the things she needed to do because Martin Scorsese had a really hard time with it apparently. You ever get a chance? Definitely check out Taxi Driver. Born on February 8th, 1974, Kimbo Slice. You ever heard of him? Not a lot of you have unless you follow MMA. He actually got his start as a street fighter, and he would basically bet people, and they would have fist fights in alleys and warehouses and backyards, and they would go on YouTube, back before YouTube kind of put a kibosh on a lot of things like that. And he got really famous from that, and the guy was quite a fighter, and then he eventually transitioned over to MMA, which he didn't do that good. He was better suited for the streets. He has 6 kids, and one of them actually fights MMA to this day. So the guy was like a really good fighter. He just couldn't wrestle and didn't have jujitsu. So, if someone took him to the ground, the fight was over. Before he got in the UFC, some other promotion hired him to be their big headliner for a show. And they actually offered the guy he was going to fight more money not to go to the ground with him. Like, don't take him down, don't wrestle him, just stand up and punch. And the guy ratted the promotion out, said, yeah, they offered me money not to take him to the ground. And that promotion folded like a month later. Died on February 8th, just last year, 2021, Marty Schottenheimer. He was an NFL coach who was the head coach of the Browns, Chiefs, Redskins, and Chargers. He was actually a player too. He played for the Baltimore Colts after playing at the University of Pittsburgh. In 2011, Marty Schottenheimer was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. By the time the diagnosis was announced publicly in 2016, it had progressed slowly and still maintained much of his memory and his function. In 2018, Schottenheimer was still able to travel and made brief pre-recorded speeches for the Chiefs and things like that. But on February 3rd, 2021, his family announced that he had been put into hospice the previous Saturday and died 5 days later on February 8th, 2021 in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was only 77 years old. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, be nice to each other.